Good evening, everyone, or afternoon, depending where you are, and welcome to today's DC iOS and iOSoho Meetup. So we're gonna get started pretty quickly off today, just to help accommodate some of our speakers' conflicts. So we are gonna kick off with Alan's talk on going from a sales career to software engineer, and then we will go into a little bit more in-depth of announcements. And then we will go into Greg's talk about some ideas from a functional programming kickstart. So without further ado, Alan, the floor is yours.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. So hello, everyone. I'm Alan, Alan Whearry. I'm a software engineer, iOS developer at Yelp. Currently, I've been there for coming up on 2 years in December. And so it's been an honor so far to be a part of that. Now, like the talk says, the title, I switched careers, right? 2 years ago, roughly 2 years ago, from a sales career into iOS development. And I'll just kind of start there, right? Like when I graduated college, I went into the sales field. I have a psychology major, or excuse me, I have a psychology degree. And I went into sales, and I really enjoyed sales. I loved it. I moved to different companies. And then my most recent company called Polymer Shapes, which was a plastic distribution company. And no, I did not sell plastic and plastic spoons and plastic bags. That's a question that I get all the time. But it was more so, industrial materials to manufacturing companies or signage and display materials. And during this time, I was doing very, very well. I mean, I became one of four selected out of 400 sales reps to be in our company's first leadership program, which is a huge thing, because at the end of that year, you have the potential to move into a management position. And by management position, I mean become a general manager of a location. And that would have been huge for me. That would have been huge, absolutely huge. However, I had to leave that leadership program early because I felt I needed to make the switch to tech now. Otherwise, if I become a branch manager or a general manager of a location, I'm not switching at all. And so I ended up doing that, and I ended up at my job at Yelp. But there's a lot that kind of went into that. And just a little bit more history about myself. I have 2 children, right? I have a family, a significant other, 2 children. I have a family. I have a family to take care of. So I can't just go out and do a boot camp for, who knows how long, 18 months, 3 months, whatever the time span may be. I just can't leave work and study code. So what I took upon myself was, okay, after work, after I spend family time, then I need to study. I need to, do whatever or pick up any book, any article, YouTube, and just learn as best as I can about this programming language, which is Swift for iOS. So there was, as you can probably imagine, working a full-time job, having a family. There was a lot of nights that I was just up very, very, very late. And you're talking 1, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes even 4 and 5, knowing that I have to wake up in a couple of hours to be at work at 8 in the morning. So it was very, very difficult. However, my sleep was something I knew I could sacrifice at this time because I knew it was temporary. A lot of the times when you're really, really pushing for something, some other aspect in your life gets sacrificed, whether it be your current job, which could have been for me, but I couldn't allow that to happen. It could have been family time, right? I can't sacrifice family time. That's super important to me. So I had to sacrifice sleep. And, there's definitely some health benefits that can come along with that. But I figured, again, it was temporary. You can't do a temporary sacrifice of your work. You can't do a temporary sacrifice of your family. because your family could just disappear, right? So I knew sleep was going to be the one that I could sacrifice. And so after all of that time, which was 19 months to be exact, from when I started learning Swift for iOS to when I got or accepted the offer at Yelp, it took 19 months. And for a lot of people, that can be a very long time. And I understand, but remember, I only had a short period of time to work with each day. And I guess what I want people to gain from my story is, you know, you can go into if there's anybody who's, thinking about going into iOS, or any type of programming, you can do it. You just have to put in the work, right? You have to find the time to study. And then second, your journey is your journey, right? And what I mean by that, I saw so many articles saying, oh, developer in 3 months, developer in 6 months, developer in 1 year, right? But everybody's journey is different. Those people doing that could have had a job, decided to leave it for 3 months, study all day, every day, and then became a developer. Same thing for 6 months. Okay. That would not have worked for me. So my journey would not be the same as that. Right. Location is a big thing. I searched hard for locations in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was living previously. However, Atlanta, Georgia it doesn't have a lot of jobs for iOS development. Now, I did get a few offers, but it took a very, very long time. Whereas as soon as I applied to some places in California, it was almost like instant where I started getting a lot of feedback. So I'd say, again, your journey is your journey. Don't compare your path to anyone else's. Even if you're a developer now and you want to move to the next level, whatever that may be, again, your journey is your journey. Trust the process and you will get there. And I'm keeping this purposely short. So sorry, I do have something to do later, but I hope you all really, really understand, again, your journey is your journey. And thank you for allowing me to speak. And I am open to questions for a few minutes. And yeah, thank you.
All right, if people, I guess, want to type some questions into the chat, then we can go ahead, or raise your hand. We can unmute you quickly for the question and answer portion. And then we'll do that probably for about 10 to 15 minutes, give or take, and then we will go into our announcements. Right. I guess our first question from Dexter was, did you focus predominantly on UI kit? Because I assume that's what VOI wasn't around yet.
Yeah, it was all UI kit, because I can't remember if it was just released when I started or it was released that same year when I started learning. But I figured to maximize my chances of getting hired, I need to know UI kit, right? I was okay with not learning Objective-C, right? Because I know a lot of companies were already accepting Swift as their language of choice moving forward. So that was going to give me a high population of companies I could apply to. And so with that, it was going to be UI kit as well. When Swift UI did come out, I thought about trying to make that transition into using Swift UI, but it's brand new, right? There's got to be adoption time. And I figured if I start learning that now while I'm trying to get a job, I'm going to miss out on a lot of things that UI kit has to offer that I could use it on the job. And so I went all in on UI kit and all in on the Swift language. Let's see. I think someone said, what books did you use for teaching yourself? Yeah, that's a great question. I actually wrote an article about the best books for someone starting their journey. But I think it's so many. But of course, the first one for me is the Swift, Apple's book on Swift. It's free. It's so definitely that. Someone said drop the link. I can try to find it really quick. Let's see. And perfect, go to my, yeah, this should be it. All right, can I add it to the chat? Perfect, there you go. But yeah, those books listed, I mean, I have, again, the Swift programming language book, which is by Apple. I have Mastering Swift, which I thought was a really great book. And then kind of just to skip ahead a little bit, I think Test-Driven Development with Swift, which was by Dr. Dominic, hope I'm pronouncing his name, Hauser. Great person, great book. There is an updated version, not of this book, but an updated test-driven development book by someone else that he even mentioned was a great book, but I haven't had the chance to take a look at it. And then when it comes to hiring, right, getting prepared for interviews, there's going to be Design Patterns by Tutorials by Ray Wenderlich, Data Structures and Algorithms in Swift by Ray Wenderlich, and then, almost like the holy grail book of interviewing, Cracking the Coding Interview. Let's see.
Yeah, I think I can help. So next question was a follow-up to the first one. How much, if any, Swift UI do you use now?
None. To be honest, none. I guess at least at work. We want to make the transition into Swift UI. It just has to kind of go through our core iOS team, essentially, in how we're going to architect and fit it into our current architecture that's based off UIKit and then MVVM with like another layer on top of that. So at work, none. Well, I did do a hackathon at work, which we did a tvOS app, and we use Swift UI, but again, during the day-to-day, yeah, none.
All right, next question. Now, I guess, so follow-up after that was, okay, one sec, I'm tracking. Okay, is there anything you wish you learned later in the process that you wish you would learn sooner?
Yeah, I think sort of my ending thought on my little speech was just that, my journey is, my own. I wish I would have learned that at the beginning, because I know at the beginning I was stressing myself out, like, why am I not getting this? Why am I not, getting feedback from applying? Why, et cetera, why do I feel behind on this subject, right? And it's just like, my journey is my own journey. I can't control, there's only but so much I can control, right? And because of the differences in my journey to someone else, that's an uncontrollable. So for me, it's no reason to stress out on it. If I can't control it, I can't change the outcome. So it's just trust the process that I'm on. And yeah.
All right, and then I think someone offered a comment from Mike Sand, and he said he had a similar story, and then I think he said as a reference he linked XKCD comics. I guess everyone has their own experiences. Next question was, what was the most difficult part or topic to learn?
So I think closures was one. I didn't grasp the way, I guess it was explained in some of the books that I read. After that is going to be hands down design patterns and algorithms, because again, I'm a psychology major. I didn't, You don't learn about those that stuff in psychology, right? You don't learn about object-oriented programming or design. No, there's none of that. So I think those were going to be the, definitely hands down the hardest things to understand. Probably for anyone self-taught, but definitely for me. It was probably hard for people who have a computer science degree. It's tough. It is tough.
Okay. Next question was from Greg, and he asked, I guess when you're talking about the materials you're using, he asked, do you mean everyone can code? That was my first two.
Yeah, I think when he said everyone, do you mean everyone can code? That's an organization, right?
No,
Yeah,
this is Greg. This is the Apple book.
Oh, no. Sorry, the Swift, the actual Swift book by Apple. Yeah, I think it's just Swift programming language, I think is what it's called. It's in the books, what used to be called iBooks, I think, but I think they changed the name to just books. But yeah, just the Swift programming language book.
all right, sweet. And then our last question, which we have for now is, did you have a mentor along the way to help you review your code? If so, how did you find one?
Oh, wow, that is a good question. No, I didn't have a mentor at all. And I wish that's probably something else I wish I would have known sooner, would be to find a mentor. I did have someone review my code that I had on GitHub, but it was just like a one-time thing. And once they did that, like, it was like, okay, I've made my fixes. This is like what it's going to be, and I'm using that to apply and hope for the best. But no, someone who would have been with me, that could have been another thing that would have helped me, get to this point faster, as if I had a mentor to, kind of guide me along the way of what I need to learn next. It's tough doing it alone. It's tough, trying to find out what you should learn when you don't even know what you should learn. So a trick, or just a quick trick that I used, and then I got like 2 minutes left. A quick trick that I had used when I was starting the process was, at one point, pretty much everyone had like an iOS dev boot camp, like almost everyone. And they always had some type of syllabus. And a lot of times you just like have to input your email so they can like email market you, and they'll send you what the syllabus was. And I would look at what, I would do that and then look at the syllabus and say, oh, this is what they're going to go through. And, it could be, strings and variables and constants, and then closures, and then networking, and et cetera. And so I sort of had a guideline there. Next thing I did was look at job descriptions and see what they were requiring you to know. And I would put that in an Excel sheet and essentially keep doing that. And every time I would, I guess, feel comfortable in the subject, I go to that Excel sheet, like mark it out, say that it's done, and then go to the next thing.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Alan, I do know you have to run, so thank you for your time. We definitely really greatly appreciate you coming. And I guess I at least can offer a shameless plug. If you don't know, Alan is also the organizer behind the iOS Dev Happy Hour. So if you have time, you should definitely check it out on Twitter and hit up the next one.
Yeah, the next one is on the 24th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So I think that's 2 Eastern time, I think, if my math's correct. So yeah, it's a fun time. 200 plus iOS developers come and join and just hang out, have a good time, and share knowledge, experience, and yeah, again, just to hang out. So yeah.
Well, thank you once again. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully enjoy the rest of the talks here. I do have to head out. So thank you again.
All right, and with that, now we will jump back and actually do our announcements and quick lead off. Paul, you have anything you want to add? Do you want to present, or do you want me to present the slides?
Yeah, feel free to present. Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late myself. If you have it handy, I am happy to have you present and add anything.
I got it. All right, here we go. So let us kick this off quickly. So welcome to today's meetup. As you know, we've already kind of jumped right into the thick of it, but so we'll run this part a little faster. So you already
We go to
know
announcements already.
yeah, we already did some of the announcements. So just, once again, a reminder that we have our YouTube channel and our Slack community, and we'll post those links out at the end of the meetup. And actually, I think that's the only one we'll go over now, because the next one's about our next meetup. So we'll save that for the end. So without further ado, I guess we will hand it off. And Greg, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody, and thank you. Let me grab control to share the screen. Sorry, could you direct me to the little bit of UI that says, I guess I'll look in the menu. I found it, thank you. Just a moment while I get that set up. Turn on my video. Okay, hi everybody. I'm Greg Mitsakopoulos. I'm from Chicago Cocoa Heads, and I'm an iOS hobbyist. I've got a full-time job, and like Alan, have a family as well. So quite busy. I am humbled to learn that author Daniel H Steinberg is on the call with us. I hope I've done him and his material some justice. Just trying to adjust my windows around to see if I can see your faces. Seems to have disappeared. That's not it. Or regardless, I think I'll just carry it on, and please verbalize if you have questions, need to interrupt me along the way, because I can't monitor chat. So again, welcome to the Pandemic edition. Since my first step into a Chicago Cocoa Heads meeting in 2018, I'm pleased to have received encouragement and to have kept learning. Now I'm happy to be able to share something with you. Authors Daniel Steinberg and Matteo Manfredini created all the code, illustrations, concepts, and many of the presented words. I'll identify Matteo's material, otherwise it's Daniel's. I informally promised Chicago Cocoa Head Slack in January I'd present something on the condition I learned something from this book. This eased me down the path to be here today. My intention to show and tell led to my feeling more engaged with the book. Also then, I tried harder not to gloss over material I didn't understand. I definitely didn't get everything, and I read it twice. The author himself sometimes needs to stare at the examples towards the end of the book to refresh his understanding. There are some advanced examples in the book. On the other hand, I duked it out with things that felt hard to me. Who hasn't been there before? The constants of examples across different types in the book helped build my understanding. I gained confidence while becoming a little more comfortable with closures, generics, and higher order functions. These previously seemed obscure. This brings me to a sub-story, which preceded my promise to present. Oh boy. So before this book, I felt bogged down working through tutorial and app architecture. This was Matteo's for those playing along at home. Partly this was from difficulty in fluently reading through the tutorial peppered with what were obscure things to me at the time. Keeping at that tutorial before my time to approach it would have compounded my frustration, and maybe use of cigarettes. Just kidding. This detour helped me re-engage with the tutorial, and I'm optimistic I will feel less burdened this time around. Sometimes learning means slowing down to take the scenic route. As progress of the mind isn't always linear, the best fit to your destination may not always be the most direct path. So what is functional programming generally? For one, FP is not new. FP's math roots go back a century, and in programming, more than 60 years. Mateo wrote, the imperative paradigm is patterned around a model computer's computational structure. There's control flow and instructions that read and modify state. Objects are like imperative programs themselves. But states needed to do useful things. However, hard-to-find bugs can appear when a lot of code depends on the state of other objects, which have unexpectedly become changed. The FP paradigm emphasizes pure functions. These will always return the same output for the same input. Pure functions don't rely on local or global state, and they have no side effects. Some other hallmarks of FP are one function's output is another's input. You pipe that forward. Functions can be composed. In other words, progressively applied. Functions can accept other functions, and functions can be passed around like any other type. There are branches and switches, but there are no variables nor loops. Recursion replaces loops. Just a moment. There we go. Open your eyes to another tool. Add to your repertoire, but don't force its use or discard what you already know. Functional programming is a clean way to transform values in data. Daniel Steinberg says this subject will help you tackle Combine and Swift UI. Use may lead to fewer side effects. Please ask your doctor today. Steinberg says we'll prefer pure functions, and where possible, functions that depend only on self and parameters. Similarly, we'll prefer methods where a method's output depends only on self and the parameters being passed to it. This is because functions without side effects are easier to reason about. And working with copies helps ensure you don't get things changed from underneath you. We're going to prefer functions that don't mutate self. The naming convention is to name functions like these with the suffix ed rather than in the imperative. So think sorted instead of sort. Now for some basics. Map shouldn't be dismissed as just some for-in concept. Speaking generally, not just for array, map takes a fill box and a function to transform the contents and returns another box with the transformed contents. Let's look at array first. Here's a simplistic re-implementation of map on array. Steinberg notes, many developers know only map on array, and so falsely conclude that map is only syntactic sugar for a for loop. Suppose f, the transform argument, is string in string.count. The closure is of type takes a string and returns int. The shape of f, if you will, that map uses is flat. In the context of array, map raises F into the world of array. So map F accepts an array of strings and returns an array of ints. And map for optional. So that map is not just for array, surprised me as a newbie, I suppose. Note the same F from the prior screen can be used as is here too. Steinberg notes in numerous ways, map is a design pattern you can bring to your own types. Reviewing map for array and optional, you can see the similarity that, let me scroll my screen a little bit. You can see the similarity that both wrap the return in the desired type. Okay, what flat map isn't? As much as map isn't merely syntactic sugar for a for loop, flat map's reason to exist isn't the correction of an array of arrays produced by map when a single array is desired. It's also not merely twin brother to the joined instance method on array. So what is it? More bad puns. So a flat map for array. Zoom this in a little bit. Here's a simplistic reimplementation of flat map on array. You can compare the red font in flat map with map to see the difference between them. Type supporting flat map and just, there's just no time to cover just today, are known as monads, M. So the above reads, F accepts generic type A and returns the monad generic in type B. Speaking in the general, and not only for array, flat map reaches inside the monad, applies F to a copy of the contents, and returns a new monad instance containing the transform results. It also combines the context of the first and new monads. You can compare flat map with map. The red dot sum in the case is unneeded because the return type of transform is already that as promised by flat map, owing to the transform's return type. I enjoyed working through the several examples of flat map in different types in the book. Like map, Steinberg wants to show in many different ways, helpfully, that flat map is a design pattern you can bring to your own types. We saw earlier that map can use the same transform function for different types. Flat map's powers that map doesn't have come at a small cost, which is to say, you'll need to write a new implementation of F for each of your types you wish to flat map. And now for the shape of flat map, according to Steinberg. The shape of the transform F that flat map uses is diagonal. What happens if we map this with diagonal F? Uh-oh. Using a diagonal F with map in this case produces an array of an array, and this might not be what we wanted. In contrast to map with F, flat map with F raises the diagonally shaped F to work in the context we want, here, array. It also flattens it, so we don't end up with an array seen in the previous diagram. And now for compact map for array. Use case, if say for network requests, we're only looking at what went right, one strategy might be to discard all of the nils and unwrap the optionals that aren't nil. Compact map can assist. You can compare compact map with map. Red in my compact map shows the code differences between map and compact map. The if-let allows us to only handle non-nil elements and to add their unwrapped values to the result array. Now for Mateo's examples. In the imperative paradigm, optionals need a lot of unwrapping. Map and flat map can help us code concisely. Recall that the factorial in math doesn't exist for negative numbers. In code, this was represented by a return of nil. Say you want to perform an operation that takes an int after the factorial func. In this case, the operation is to square an int. There are many optionals to unwrap before we can return in the factorial and square func. Mateo says, this pattern repeats itself, regarding against all possible ints, but the unwrappings don't express any other concept. So map to the rescue. Recall, the map function takes an optional and applies another function, returning an optional with the result. If the input is nil, map simply returns another nil. This is exactly what the function with all the optional bindings does. I realize here it's a little contrived that factorial and squares parameter is an optional int, but the optionality will be needed for the map on optional to work. This version with map is shorter and easier to understand. Why though? The optional unwrapping after the first map. The signature of map tells us that map wraps whatever type the transform returns into an optional. The factorial func already returns an optional int. So mapping this creates an optional int. But you may know that optional listing is possible considering the return of optional as an enum. The sum case can contain any type, even another optional. So the optional unwrapping in the factorial and square function is needed to get rid of the nested optional. But wasn't an apparent aim of refactoring using map to get rid of optional unwrapping? Mateo suggests, if you find you need to unwrap between successive calls of map, it's time to use flat map instead. And flat map fixes it. This is because flat map accounts for the transform already return an optional, and so it won't nest it inside of another one. There's a small bug. Flat map and map need to change positions. You can skip over nil in your output, but use compact map here instead of flat map, since flat map for this use has been deprecated. I acknowledge that filter, reduced, sorted, and zip are also functional programming techniques in Swift, but there's not enough time for it all. I won't bother to verbalize this bad pun. You can read it yourself and suffer. So flat map can chain actions with info we carry along, plus validate that information by indicating a successful or failing state. Here we'll look at an example from the book using the result type. With flat map, result will go from the success case to the failure case in the resultant instance. So this trunk is either empty or contains a point. And here's the flat map extension. We're expressing that the trunk has two dimensions, and if the point the trunk holds is moved beyond these, the trunk becomes empty. So we've seen map and flat map can chain function calls and types that support them and carry intermediate values, including state. You can chain map and flat map and optional using syntactic sugar or not. It's your choice. All that said, I ran to this opinion after I read Steinberg's book. Matteo pragmatically opines that the advantages functors and monads bring to Swift aren't worth the effort to learn. This is because Swift does not forbid use of state. On the other hand, in pure functional programming, state can only be carried forward in functors and monads. Resolve this contradiction with, as Matteo notes, Swift is a multi-paradigm language, which is to say, imperative, object-oriented, protocol-oriented, and functional. So avail yourself to mixing and matching the tools as best suits your needs. The base is always you, but raised by a degree of courage and encouragement. Because it should help you along your journey, I encourage anyone who hasn't presented before to cast away any concern and make a presentation of your own. I hope I have presented Daniel's diagrams, which may clarify flat map and map for you and further your realization they are not only for array. Maybe I've piqued your interest in functional programming. I'd like to spotlight from Chicago Cocoa Heads, Eric Creech and Jacob Van Order for taking time to mentor me pre-pandemic. Numerous other Cocoa Headers have been great and supportive, whether live or on Slack. Thank you for your attention and encouragement. And now I'd like to take comments and questions.
All right, same format as before. Just either you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can drop the comments in the chat and we'll read them out. And then, yeah, so any questions, people? All right, Ed wants to know what tool you use for your presentation.
Sure, this is a great app I've been using for a few years now. It's called MindNode. And I stumbled across this idea to use it for a presentation. Here I was just outlining what I thought I might talk about today, but I ended up using it for the whole shebang. And I think I may even use it in my work.
I guess if no other questions, we'll go back with our wrap-up announcements. And oh, wait, where we go. Another question from Dexter. Have you been using functional programming in your day-to-day program, or do you find it more theoretical?
I'm smiling because I've actually taken about a month off. So my day job is as a chemist. So this is a hobby of mine. So I guess you could say it's more theoretical because the tutorial I'm studying is on my way to making my first app. So it's all somewhat theoretical. But I did find the detour most helpful. You know, as I said, I brushed up on what closures and other such obscure items were. Thanks for your question. And thanks for Steve dropping the link in the chat to MindNode. Yeah, I would agree. I've been using MindNode just like in a personal capacity, you know, like trip planning. So I find it, there are a ton of articles out there. It helps you break out of like a more linear thought. And as the thoughts come to you, you just slap them on the page and things grow. Well, I guess torture this metaphor more organically than having, point one, sub point A, sub point B, and so on.
All right, well, thank you, Greg. That was a great presentation. I think hopefully if you have time to stick around, when we have the breakout rooms, we'll have a room so people can go chat with Greg directly. So with that, I will go back and share our screen and we'll go through our wrap-up announcements. All right, so next up, our next meetup will be on August 10th. And at that time, we will again have two speakers. The first will be Joel, who will be presenting with inclusivity with Apple. Other bad ideas. I'm curious to hear what those bad ideas are, so that will definitely be an interesting talk for sure. But of course, as you all know, we're always looking for more speakers for later on through the rest of the year. So we have here the link for our ability to submit talks. So I'll copy that and paste that into the chat so people can look at that. So if you have a talk you want to present, feel free to drop it off. We'd love to have you. And we will kick off our networking session in just a second. And then before we do your turn, Paul, you have any other comments you want to bring up?
Yeah, the your turn is usually like we open up for anybody who would like to share an announcement. Unless you're hiring, if you're hiring or looking for a job, we'll be able to do that in the networking session right after. But if you yourself working on a side project or any cool tool you've discovered, you want to share with the community, you want someone to join you on your journey of whatever, it's very much open. For this right now is open for comments. If you want to share something, feel free to do so by just raising your hand. And if not, we'll jump into breakout rooms.
I don't think I see anything. We'll give it one more second. If not, then what I will do is I will stop the recording. I will remove the muting restrictions, and then we can go into the breakout rooms. Thank you, everybody.